let's move on to how we can be proactive in our own care. You kind of preach the gospel of nutrition and lifestyle support in the fight against MS. Tell us what recommendations you have just in general for folks with MS.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I remember early on in COVID, people were saying, well, there are a lot of lifestyle risk factors of severe COVID, like obesity and hypertension and diabetes. And people said, well, if you have really good nutrition, you can reduce your risk of COVID. And I thought that was kind of silly. It's like, what are you going to do? Go on a crash diet and suddenly become
Right.
healthier like in the next 2 weeks? But now it's been over a year. Maybe there are some people out there who have dramatically reduced their risk just through lifestyle. So,
Right.
it's kind of funny that
Yeah.
you mentioned that. You
Yeah.
know, so I'm a big proponent of nutrition. Now, to put this out there, there's no single diet that's proven to treat MS.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few small randomized trials that have been done, but there's nothing definitive. I can't really
Mm-hmm.
recommend a single diet.
Right.
However, there is epidemiologic evidence that MS is more common in countries where there's higher saturated fat consumption and higher dairy consumption. And
Hmm.
so, there may be other confounders, but it may be
Mm-hmm.
better to have more of a plant-based diet, to eat
Mm.
more whole fruits and vegetables. There's also some evidence that salt may be linked to MS, sodium, in
Oh,
processed
damn
food.
it. I love salt. Salt and sugar, they're awful for you and they're my faves, but I get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen, I could summarize my advice by saying, if it tastes good, spit it
Yeah.
out. I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
God.
I'm just kidding. You have to be creative and everything.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what is the actual scientific evidence for this? Well, there's a guy in Australia who has multiple sclerosis. He's an emergency medicine doctor. His name is Professor George Jelinek. Just to reveal conflicts of interest, I do know this guy. He's not
Mm-hmm.
paying me or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a study called the Holism Study, which is a cross-sectional study looking at people with MS and looking at their diet. And, what he found is that people who tend to eat less saturated fat, people who take an omega-3 saturated fatty acid supplement such as flaxseed oil and
Mm.
take vitamin D tend to do better on the average. Of course, there are a lot of confounders in this, so it's not definitive, but, there's some evidence for it. I actually recently interviewed Dr. Terry Walls, and I'm posting that video on September 22nd, so if anyone wants to take a look at it.
Yeah.
But basically, the reason I interviewed her is because she actually did a randomized study comparing her diet, which is a modified paleo diet, against the Swank diet, which is a diet created by Dr. Roy Swank, who believed that a low saturated fat diet could treat MS. The
Mm-hmm.
study is called the WAVES study, and it was in relapsing MS, and it was a relatively short study, only 6 months. And, both groups did pretty well. Both groups showed a reduction in fatigue, and both groups showed a very slight improvement in walking measured by the 6-minute walk test. There
Mm-hmm.
was a trend in some of the outcomes, such as fatigue, where the Walls group did a little bit better, but not so definitive to recommend one diet over the other, in my opinion. But it
Mm-hmm.
goes to show you that, any healthy diet can potentially reduce MS fatigue and possibly improve walking in MS. It was a short-term
Mm-hmm.
study, but, it looks to be in the positive direction. And hopefully we'll get more of these randomized studies.
Yeah. And don't you think there's something to just paying attention? I mean, if you are paying attention to what you're eating, and likely then you might even pay attention to getting some movement, and maybe you'll drink some more water than you usually do. I've always felt like, aside from even MS, if you just paid attention and did better, that you're going to feel better,
I think that's definitely
right?
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question. The saturated fats, can you talk a little bit about what that is? Because that's kind of an umbrella term, but as an example, what foods fall under that?
Well, saturated fats are mostly in animal products like fatty meats like beef and cheese, but also in some plant foods like in avocados and coconut. So
Mhm.
Dr. Roy Swank, his original idea came from these observational studies in Norway. And he basically found that people who lived near the coast, who tended to fish more and eat more fish and seafood, tended to have lower rates of MS compared to people who lived more inland and tended to eat more beef and dairy. And he
Mm-hmm.
hypothesized that saturated fat could get into the cell membranes of immune cells and epithelial cells and somehow contribute to inflammation and multiple sclerosis. Now, the evidence for this is far from definitive.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Terry Walls, advocates for a relatively high saturated fat
Yes,
diet.
she does. Mm-hmm.
And, she recommends a lot of foods like organ meats and coconut
Mm-hmm.
milk, and avocado
Mm-hmm.
and beef, grass-fed beef that, are relatively high in saturated fat. And, her
Mm-hmm.
diet looked pretty good in this randomized study against the Swank diet. So,
Mm-hmm.
me personally, I find it to be most effective to make a specific recommendation. But if
Mm-hmm.
I have a patient who says, I want to try the Walls protocol, I'm perfectly fine with that,
Try it.
because there's really no
Mm-hmm.
evidence for one specific diet. The strongest recommendation I would give is eliminate processed food. Try to get rid of processed sugar, processed starch, refined oils, refined salt. You'll probably see the greatest benefit just from that change alone. Eat more whole foods.
Yeah. Not so. Yeah, I think that can be confusing. Processed meaning things are added to it rather than, something where there's nothing added to it. It is the plant. It is even the beef. I mean, just nothing. Processed is additives at its core, right?
Yeah, like closer to how our ancestors ate. One of the reasons that we think that lifestyle may be a factor of MS is just the tremendous range in the rate of MS in different areas in the world. For instance, in Syracuse, New York, 1 in 220 people, 222 people has multiple sclerosis. So it's not that rare. But in Cuenca,
Crazy.
Ecuador, there was a study suggesting it's only 1 in 25,000. So a 100-fold difference in the rate of
Yeah.
MS. Now, there could be other factors. Obviously, the sun, Ecuador is
Right.
close to the equator. There
Mm-hmm.
could be like hygiene. We think that in developed countries, people walk around, they don't walk around barefoot. They don't get parasites. It messes up their immune
Right.
system. There could be genetic differences, but it's highly likely that lifestyle is a factor, not necessarily something that you did to cause MS, but just like clothing, working indoors, blocking the sun, being clean, not getting parasitic infections. That may increase the risk of MS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember seeing Dr. Perlmutter in Florida years and years ago, and very nice, personable guy. And we were just kind of off the cuff talking, not about MS, but I mentioned about my kids, and they were little at the time. And he said, "Do you let them play in the dirt?" And it was just such a strange question. And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do. We like to pick," it's so weird, but we like to pick up the roly-polies and the worms, and we played with them. And he said, "Perfect. Don't get them out of the dirt. Let them stay in the dirt. Let them eat some dirt. We've gotten too hygienic. We're using too many, antibacterials and that sort of thing. Let your body do a little work so it doesn't forget how." It's like, okay, that'll thrill my kids. Good. Go get dirty. So I guess that's along the same lines of what you're saying.
Maybe it will decrease their risk of MS. I don't know. There was a study published a long time ago in the New England Journal of Medicine where they actually intentionally infected people with hookworms, a parasite.
Oh, geez.
Apparently, this was considered safe because there was a particular parasite, like a special hookworm that doesn't replicate within the body. And they were actually able to demonstrate a 50% reduction in relapses. Now, this is
Wow.
never going to become a standard treatment of MS, for
Yeah.
obvious reasons, but it
Don't
kind of
sign me up for that
proves,
one.
yeah, it proves an interesting concept.
Mm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't want a hookworm. But anyway, so, okay, that's nutrition. What about lifestyle? So I'm going to guess you're going to say move it or lose it.
Yeah. So, historically, this is a long time ago, doctors used to advise patients with MS not to exercise because there
Yeah.
was this thought that it would make their symptoms worse. And
Uh-huh.
certainly a lot of people do temporarily get worse because of this UTOFS phenomenon. You could exercise and then suddenly you're dragging your legs. But in the long run, exercise is good. And if you experience that phenomenon where you feel lousy, try to exercise in the cool, like an air-conditioned gym or early in the morning or swimming. And, if you need to take a rest, some people think like short bursts of exercise with appropriate rest is the best way to go. But hey, I have some young patients who are really fit and athletic and they run marathons. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, as long as you could tolerate it.
Yeah. I was diagnosed 13 years ago, coming up on 14. And my first neurologist, who didn't last as my neurologist very long, this was part of the reason, because he said to me immediately, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And he said, do you work? And I said, well, yeah, because I'm a stay-at-home mom. And he goes, no, I mean outside the home. And I said, no, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And he said, okay, that's great. Then don't ever go back to work because stress is really bad for you. And first of all, I thought, you've clearly never stayed home with kids, because that's some stress. And then he said, and don't exercise, like just dial down your stress and just be still as much as possible. And I thought, that doesn't even make sense to me. I don't need a medical degree to know that that's just dumb, frankly. So yeah, we parted ways pretty quickly thereafter. But I bring that up just to say, you said a very long time ago, it wasn't that long ago that I was getting that kind of advice too. So hopefully we've moved on beyond that. And, I was just talking to somebody earlier today about this, that I get questions every single day from people with MS asking me, what do you do for fatigue? And I always say to them, this is going to sound 100% counterintuitive, but I move, I exercise, and I don't want to do it. When I'm really fatigued, it is literally the last thing on this God's green earth I want to do, but I will get up and move. And I'm not talking about like running a marathon or anything, but just some movement, some light exercise. And I feel better. The fatigue starts to lift. The cog fog can lift. So I get that. I mean, I'm a firm believer. I'm not appreciative of that fact either, by the way, because I don't like exercise, to be totally honest. If anybody listens to this, they know that about me. I'm honest. I don't like exercise. I'll do functional exercise. I like to like mow the lawn or pull the weeds, or, exercising just to exercise pisses me off. So, but I recognize how much better. I don't like it while I'm doing it, but I feel so much better after I've done it. And I sleep better, which we have trouble sleeping, those
Yeah,
of us
you're
with
you're
MS.
not
So
the only one to experience that. Exercise
yeah,
generally makes people feel good. And, if you're going too hard and you feel lousy, go a little bit lighter.
exactly. Back it off, like titrate. So, okay. All of that makes a lot of sense. So tell me about this book, Your Resilience in the Face of Multiple Sclerosis. You promote it as a practical, evidence-based advice to develop personal strength. So tell me about that.
Yeah, by the way, if anyone wants a copy of my book, don't buy it. You can just ask me on Twitter. I'll send you a free copy. But,
What
the
author
reason,
says that, by the way? Nobody says that. Good for you. Very kind, but wow. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, don't worry. I'm not exactly retiring on my book royalties
Right.
anyway. But
Not if you're giving it away, for sure.
yeah, the reason I wrote the book is because, I was kind of inspired by some of my patients who have a lot of problems, but live incredible lives. And, I intentionally interviewed people who have significant disabilities related to MS. So if you're a young, newly diagnosed person, don't be discouraged. These aren't necessarily typical people with MS. And it's just amazing. Some people, they have a lot of problems, but they're very happy, very productive, and they live great lives. And so, the core of the book is 5 stories of people and how they got diagnosed with MS, and a little bit about their medical treatment, but also about their family, their upbringing, and how they thrive in the face of adversity. And I interviewed 5 people, and they give me 5 different stories. And everyone does something different. Some people take a lot of pride in their productivity at work. Some people get a lot of pleasure through their family. Some people, religion is very important to their happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And, I talk about some different scientific studies on resilience, like how people thrive in response to adversity in general. And I can't talk about everything, because we don't have time. But
Right.
one psychologist that I really appreciated was a guy named Martin Seligman. And he had this idea that the field of psychology is too focused on disease, people with depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. And it was too focused on treating people with specific syndromes. And he thought that the field of psychiatry should expand and just focus on average people and focus on how they can become more resilient and have a better life and be more productive and be happier. And he called this positive psychology, because the rest of psychology is sort of negative psychology, treating diseases. And he did a lot of research on what makes people happy. And he identified 5 factors, and he used the acronym PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. And so the P stands for positive emotion. So this is what people subjectively think of as things that cause happiness, like eating a delicious food or going on vacation. And what the research shows is that this does cause happiness, but it's very temporary and it fades very quickly as soon as the stimulus goes away. And also it's highly habituating. In other words, if you're used to eating at fancy steakhouses, that becomes the norm. And now you don't really get that much pleasure for it. And now you can't eat a bad steak. So maybe it's better to just not go in the first place.
Right.
But, the point of this is he found that other factors are actually more important in long-term happiness. So one of them is the E is engagement. And this is basically being engaged in something that sort of takes up your time and engrosses you. And so this could be something like your work. You're just very passionate about what you do and you just start working and all of a sudden it's time to go home and the time just flew by and you were just captured by it. Or it could be, doing volunteer work or, playing a musical instrument or pursuing some other hobby or spending time with family, that kind of thing. The R is relationships. Relationships with friends and family and social groups, through your religion, that kind of thing. And, it's been found that people who have strong relationships with other people are much happier. And even someone with MS, let's say they have a lot of disability, they're not able to work, they could have a tremendous amount of happiness through, their social activities, through their family, having these strong personal connections. The M is meaning. And this is having like a grand purpose in life. So maybe your purpose is to, help people with multiple sclerosis, for example, to help people with disabilities, get jobs. I know that's an interest in yours. But other people could have a different purpose. They could, volunteer for their church. They could create great works of art or music. And the last thing, which is kind of related, is A, or accomplishment, which is trying to achieve things and feel good about your achievements. And again, it's not necessarily through work. It could be other achievements through your hobbies, just through contributions to society in general. And so that's kind of like the evidence-based road to happiness. And I would say, don't focus on short-term pleasure. Think about, what is your purpose in life? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to contribute? And how can you develop your relationships to people in your life that are important to you?
I love that. And that goes along with what you were referencing there was, it just launched Patients Getting Paid. And really, it is all about, for me, purpose and productivity and relationships. So that's why I made it a community, a membership community, because it's all these people with chronic illness coming together. We understand at a foundational level, we have this connection just because we all have this challenge, right? And then I have seen much evidence of when people can get up in the morning and have a purpose and at the end of the day feel that they've been productive, I mean, their mental and physical health is so much better because of it. And I just saw that over and over and over again. And I thought, how can I help people develop this? And for me, it was, helping them get work that is flexible and remote so you can do it from anywhere. But to your point, same idea. Some people that, love to play guitar and they just get so much out of it. And I think particularly when you're helping other people. So maybe that person who loves to play guitar, I think amp it up and play it for someone else, because someone else getting pleasure from something you're doing, I don't know, that just seems to bring it to another level. And I think that affects all of us if we can, help one another I think we're better off. We feel better. We feel stronger. We feel good about ourselves, right? So I don't know how to add that into PERMA, but I guess that's relationships, right? Because you want to help each other when you have relationships.
Yeah, it's
So
relationships, meaning, and achievement. It's all of those
yeah,
things.
it's all those things. I love that. Well, thanks for giving me the language of that because I inherently knew that and I've seen evidence of it, but I love PERMA. That is exactly right. I agree. And I can't wait to read your book. I'm gonna tweet you. Get a book,
All
and
right,
I'll
sounds
put
good.
I will put a link in the show notes also, so people know where to find you for that. So I just want to thank you so much. This is first of all, thank you for being patient because I had some issues trying to get this set up on my software, but la la la. Thank you for your patience, and I'm so grateful that it took a long time. Took like a year for us to hook up, but I'm glad that we did. Thank you for that. And thanks for being here today. And your educational videos on YouTube are just so great. So again, I'll put links to that. But I, again, wanted to just say thank you. We appreciate you. Keep going. Every Wednesday, right, is when you post? That's so
Generally,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, generally. We understand you're a little busy. Well, seeing a few patients here and there. Yeah, we get that. If people want to learn more about you, find you, where should they go?
Well, you can certainly check out my YouTube channel and just search my name, Brandon Beaver. And same on Twitter. I usually post research articles about MS and related things like that.
Excellent. And I will put those links in too. So since you've told me that you listen to the show, I am relatively certain you know what's coming next, right? So we here in the FUMS Nation speak to the stupid diseases it deserves, and we tell it FUMS every day. If you would be so kind as to lead us in the salute to the monster with middle fingers extended, of course. Are you ready? On three. 1, 2, 3. FUMS. Yay. Thanks so much
My
for
political
being here.
career is over now.
I'm sorry. Yeah, when they interview you for your Supreme Court seat, I'm sorry. This is going to be the downfall. But thank you for being here. Thanks for everything you do for us. We really appreciate you, Dr. Beaver.
Thank you, Kathy.